Hi, Fernando Marraro of Agrural. It's Mike Tenura of T-Storm Weather in Chicago. In this video, I'm going to show you just how late the U.S. corn crop has been planted. It by far breaks any records going back to 1986. Yields in many of the latest planted years turned out to be pretty poor, and the only way out of this situation is to have cool temperatures through the end of the growing season. Only 83% of U.S. corn had been planted as of June 16th in the United States. This is by far the latest planted crop going back to at least 1986. And you can see yields here in the latest planted years. Many of the years turned out to be only close to trend or below trend. And you might ask yourself, well, how come all the years weren't below trend? I would think that if I plant my crop really late, that means I'm going to have a poor crop. Well, the risk is certainly higher than normal for a poor crop to occur, but it's not a guarantee. This is a look at the final U.S. corn yield in the 4 latest planted crop years. 1995 was far below trend with a yield that was minus 13 bushels per acre from trend. But 1996, 1990, and more recently 2013 were pretty close to trend, telling us that we didn't always see a bad crop even though we planted really late. But we do need to keep in mind that in this year here, we did plant later than all of these years. So right off the bat, the risk to this year's crop is higher than all of these years, but we still might be able to get out of this situation. If an exact repeat of weather in 1995, 96, or 1990 or 2013 were to occur this year, this is the type of yield that we would expect using 2019 technology. In a worst case scenario, we'd end up with a yield of about 160 bushels per acre as in 1995. But in the other years, notice the yields were generally in the low 170s. Well, let's compare this to what the USDA is projecting. As of a few weeks ago, the USDA was projecting a yield of 166 bushels per acre. This chart clearly shows you that while there is risk to the downside, there also is risk to the upside. If weather were to be favorable for the rest of the growing season, we could see the USDA yield actually start to move up. This is not a guarantee that we have a poor crop just because we planted late. Well, if we keep on walking through a little bit more of the data, you can see that basically we need a couple of good things to happen in order to have a big yield. We basically need it to keep raining. In an ideal world, we would start out dry in the planting season and then get a lot of rain as we move through the summer, and especially during the pollination phase. Well, we started out very wet at planting, and that's part of the reason it will be difficult to have a super high U.S. corn yield. But things could be okay if we do keep on getting some rains. And that's pretty much what happened in many of the analog years. We never dried out a lot and we never turned really wet. Basically, in the analog years, rainfall was pretty near normal in June, July, and in August. June of this year was a little bit wetter than normal, but it certainly would fit into the range of rainfall that we saw in the 4 analogs. But differences do start to show when we look at temperatures. Temperatures need to be cool during the key part of the U.S. growing season. This is one of the key components to a high yield. You need it cool during July and August in particular, and that's how you'll end up with a nice corn yield because you won't stress the crop during pollination or the filling phase. Well, look what happened in the analog years. It was a little bit cooler than normal for the most part in July, and then except for 1995, it was near normal in August. That big heat wave though in 1995 was pretty incredible. It was the 6th warmest in the U.S. Corn Belt in 125 years of record. That tells you that we saw big heat in 1995, and that's a big part of the reason that the yield was so much lower than in the other years. If we can stay cool all the way through August and into September, then we might expect a decent yield. If we start to get some big heat later on this summer, then probably not. Well, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll talk again soon.